Hey, it's Jody. We are hurtling, I tell you, towards a new year. And I don't know if you are this way, but I tend to take this time of year to take stock a bit, think about how the past year went, try to lock in some good memories, and also reconnect with the things that matter to me going into a new year. It's not so much a resolution, but kind of a recalibration. And I know for me, that often means remembering my values, the work that I love, the people who make the stuff, whether it's music or art or books or audio, the stuff that helps me make sense of myself and the world. I know that's all very high-minded, but if that's not what this time of year is for, then I don't know what it is. Which all brings me to a gentle reminder, dear listener, that the end of the year also means we are nearing the end of the Radiotopia Fall fundraiser. It has been such a joy to make this day over this past year, and as you know, we have such big plans for next year as we head towards our America 250 series, and truly, we cannot do it without listeners like you taking the step from listener to becoming a Radiotopia member. When you support Radiotopia, you are literally helping us make this show by providing stable funding that we can use to pay for equipment, to pay our researcher, to work with Radiotopia to market the show and grow our audience and do fun collaborations. Support from people like you is the Jenga piece that keeps this whole thing from crashing down. And remember earlier when I mentioned checking in with your values? Well, to me, independent, ambitious media, a collective of the best audio makers in the world, gosh, that feels right in line with the kinds of values I want to express, and I suspect you do too, going into a new year. So, I know you're watching the calendar, but there is still time. You can do it right now. Cast a vote for this show and all of Radiotopia. Go to thisdaypod.com to support us right now. thisdaypod.com to make your tax-deductible contribution. Happy New Year, and thank you. Well, folks, we are reaching the end of the year, which means that if you are anything like me, you might be letting the spending go a little bit. Between holiday shopping and travel and parties and end-of-year donations, it can be easy to lose track of how much you're spending, what you're spending it on, and the overall state of your financial picture. Well, if you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or your phone. I've been using Monarch for a few months now, and for the first time in maybe ever, I feel like I have a real sense of how the money in my life is flowing, which, as I head into a new year, is going to really help me make some smart choices. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code THISDAY at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code THISDAY.
I'm Jeffrey Rosen, President and CEO of the National Constitution Center. A few years ago, learning about the forgotten meaning of the pursuit of happiness changed my life. When the founders wrote that famous phrase in the Declaration of Independence, they meant an ongoing commitment to self-improvement and lifelong learning. This discovery inspired me to write a book, and in my new podcast, I explore the founders' lives with the historians who know them best. Plus, filmmaker Ken Burns shares his daily practice of self-reflection. Join me for Pursuit, the Founder's Guide to Happiness.
Hey everyone, over the next couple weeks we're bringing you some of our favorite episodes from 2025. This is in part because we're giving ourselves a holiday break, and in large part because we are hard at work at our big year-long series for next year, 50 Weeks That Shaped America. I'm very excited about this series. We've already recorded a bunch of episodes. I think it's the best stuff we've ever done. But anyway, for now, listen to one of our 2025 favorites. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter, and we will see you on Tuesday, January 6th, with week 1 of 50 Weeks That Shaped America. Thanks for being with us in 2025, and Happy New Year. Hello, and welcome to This Day, a history show from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, summer of 2003, let's go to the still relatively early days of the internet, though it is the aftermath of the burst of the dot-com bubble, and the idea of what the internet will be and who it will be for still feels kind of up in the air. And here is a company in the middle of it all that is getting more and more attention that decides to switch from for-profit to non-profit status. That move, summer of 2003, was taken on by a man named Jimmy Wales. You may recognize that name. He announced that his website, Wikipedia, would now be part of the Wikimedia Foundation. So yes, I know in this intro I managed to take a very fascinating topic, Wikipedia's role in society, and frame it as a story of tax status. But that is indeed at the heart of why this story is so interesting, especially as we have now seen in the decades since how profit motives have skewed and twisted the way the internet does and does not serve us, the people. So here to discuss, as always, Nicole Hemmer of Vanderbilt and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
And our special guest for this episode is historian and author Garrett Graff, journalist, former editor at Politico and Washingtonian, author of books on Watergate, 9/11, D-Day, a bunch more, and now host of a new season of the excellent podcast Long Shadow. This season is called Breaking the Internet, and it's a kind of sweeping look at some of the pivotal moments in the history of the internet and how we got to this, I would say, very broken, very divisive moment. So, Garrett, congrats on the new season, and thank you for joining us.
It is a pleasure to be with you.
I want to talk about the large sweep that you take on throughout this multi-episode series, but let's talk a little bit about this Wikimedia moment. So Jimmy Wales is born in Huntsville, Alabama. He's kind of a serial entrepreneur. He launches a bunch of early internet startups. I think one of them is a little X-rated. I think anyone who sort of jumps on the internet and starts some things is going to start a porn site. So, Jimmy gets in there. But then he also makes this online encyclopedia, which eventually turns into Wikipedia. So, Garrett, take us to this moment kind of in the wake of the dot-com bubble and convince us why it matters that Jimmy Wales declared, hey, you know what? Like, it's not all about the money.
Yeah. So I want to take you back to the early 2000s and this moment where you see the founding of the movement that we now call Web 2.0, which was this explosion of user-generated and participatory content, the breaking down of traditional mainstream media gatekeepers, the explosion of blogs and blogging, and the rise of YouTube, the founding of Facebook in 2004. These sort of early moments of what we sort of now recognize as social media. And one of the first sort of big titanic battles of that era of sort of user-generated content in the user-generated internet versus big corporate world was the battle over encyclopedias. And those of us of a certain generation will remember an era when you had encyclopedias that were like sold by door-to-door salespeople. And like I remember my family in Vermont growing up, we bought the World Book Encyclopedia, my parents did, and it was like a big deal. Yeah. And it was a big financial family investment, and it took up a whole shelf of the bookshelf. And Jimmy Wales was going, he is of a slightly older generation than myself, but he grew up having this same experience. And the encyclopedia was really a once-in-a-lifetime purchase for a family. And Jimmy Wales had this idea for a free encyclopedia that he launched in March of 2000. And he'd hired a guy named Larry Sanger, who was another sort of internet entrepreneur and philosopher. And the website was called Newpedia, and it was supposed to be peer-reviewed. And Jimmy Wales sort of very quickly realized, like, that's also a really hard way to write an encyclopedia. And they were introduced to this concept of a wiki, which is a Hawaiian word for quick. And it was this new tool online that was like easily editable. and they created a Newpedia in wiki in January of 2001. And within just a couple of days, they realized that this was going to be a big success, and it took off. And they had more articles within a few days on the Newpedia wiki than they did on Newpedia itself. And over time, that evolved into what we now call Wikipedia. And in June 20th, 2003, they created the Wikimedia Foundation as the nonprofit entity that was going to be the owner of the intellectual property and operations of Wikipedia. And this sort of first battle at that time, as I was talking about, was so there was the old style World Book, Encyclopedia Britannica, and then Microsoft, the titanic giant juggernaut Microsoft, had come along with Encarta. Mm-hmm. And Encarta was the Microsoft encyclopedia that was going to be this new age effort to be distributed on CD-ROMs. And
you're telling my childhood right now.
I was going to say,
I've lived through all of this.
I'm like talking, as I'm saying this, I'm having like very specific memories of being in the school library and like loading up the right Encarta disc, which is sort of like saying, and then the Pony Express rider came down the street. And in 2001, if you had to place a bet between, here was this free user-edited, user-created, thing with a it's not actually super complicated, but with a relatively complex editing system that you would have to sort of learn as a volunteer and give your knowledge for free, in this community. Or you'd bet on Microsoft. Right. As the winner of the encyclopedia wars of the early aughts. Like, everyone was planning to bet on Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And then what happened in very short order as part of this explosion in the early 2000s of Web 2.0 with blogs and YouTube and social media was like Wikipedia won. And it was this really shocking moment, I think, for a lot of web users and corporations also, realizing that they were sort of now competing against a universe of creators that they had never experienced before. And this idea that like you actually could just have a free website that people cared enough about to edit thoughtfully and with a great degree of detail, particularly now 25 years into this as we are now, like Wikipedia is far more authoritative about most subjects than almost any other source that you can find, including like the most rigorous academic sources you could possibly find about most subjects.
What I love about you positioning this within the world of Web 2.0 is that it gets us back to that moment at the beginning of this when there was this so much optimism around this emergence of a new kind of social media, that it would be democratizing, and in a way that it would like not just democratize knowledge and democratize communication and media, but it would democratize capitalism, right? You could have this not-for-profit organization that was beating out Microsoft. At the same time, like the fact that it became authoritative is something I don't think a lot of people would have anticipated at the time.
And was very controversial. I mean, Kellie and Niki, especially as people who are in academia, can you just take us to that moment about like people starting to use Wikipedia as a source and teachers,
oh my gosh, it's like the ChatGPT of the
that's an exact parallel, right?
Yeah.
Right? No, there was a real suspicion around it. And even now, you can't cite Wikipedia in an academic paper unless it's an academic paper about Wikipedia.
Yeah, not seriously. No, I tell my students all the time, I'm like, Wikipedia is a good place to start, but not a good place to finish. So if you are doing your paper on, I don't know, biography of Frederick Douglass or whatever, sure, go there and get like your base, you know what I mean? And get sort of like your key talking points. What I do like about Wikipedia, though, is that, you know, it has footnotes and it has a reference section. And so you can cross sort of examine what that you're looking at, and maybe you find the exact scholarly article that has the real story that you need, and then you go there. So starting place, but I wouldn't write everything just based off of that one entry, because, you know, like all social media and certain algorithms, it's biased. You know, it has flaws.
Yeah.
And it's crowdsourced, so it doesn't have clear authorship, and that makes it dicey as an academic source.
You know, and Garrett, I think this is where your sort of professional experience also brings into this, because you come from journalism, right? I mean, we've talked about corporations and the crowd, but I think the other kind of stool here is academics and journalists and experts, right? And I think when people were skeptical of Wikipedia, it was because it was not necessarily, it was like, oh, I trust the corporations. It was more, this is undermining sort of expertise that often comes from academia or journalism, right?
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of this evolution is what has changed over 25 years. And, you know, I think in understanding all of the flaws that you all have raised with Wikipedia, which I, for the most part, agree with, at the same time, the idea... like on almost every subject, it is good enough for people who are interested in a subject. Like, again, you would not want to base your PhD dissertation on it, but if you like want to know the history of the Gulf War, or want to know, you know, who Frederick Douglass was and not read the 600-page biography of him, right? Like that. Like, it's totally good enough. And over 25 years, it has gotten accurate enough. Because, like, part of this is this community spirit where, yes, authorship is hard to track unless you're sort of a Wikipedia expert. But at the same time, the edits are all trackable. And there is this community of people who really keep a very close eye over... you know, both the news as it's unfolding on a given day and you know, who's editing what page. You know, one of the like most amazing sort of things on the web these days is like the moment you get a headline of a celebrity dying, go to their Wikipedia page, and their Wikipedia page will have already been completely and thoroughly edited top to bottom to like note their death, their, you know, the all changed to the past tense. Like it's this, like there's this real sort of rhythm of Wikipedia now that I find really fascinating, up to and including it's a great source on breaking news events. And, you know, if you go a couple of hours after a major news event, you know, the information that Wikipedia assembles on that news event is, you know, at least as good as a New York Times article, and as rigorous, and sometimes better because it has the ability to pull from lots of different news reports before, you know, one news reporter is able to be authoritative.
Moreover, you know, I think someone like Jimmy Wales would argue that you can also look at that page and it can sort of provide you a meta understanding of how something is being crafted, right? And if you look at the different ways it's been edited and stories have gotten, you know, and that's, what do they call the back channel, the talk section?
The discussion,
you know? But like, you know, it gives you a sense of how sort of these things get crafted in real time, which you don't get that when you read a New York Times article necessarily, right?
We're supposed to learn from our own mistakes, but other people's errors can be instructive too. From efforts to control the weather that went disastrously awry, to the untimely death of the Segway boss, history is a treasure trove of mishaps and meltdowns that can teach us all. I'm Tim Harford, host of Cautionary Tales, the podcast that mines the greatest fiascos of the past for their most valuable lessons. Listen to Cautionary Tales wherever you get your podcasts.
So we are starting to get into the thick of the holiday season, and while I love the holidays, I also know that it's a really tricky time to try and eat healthy. The sweets, the baked goods, the holiday parties, the family dinners. I have a theory that the window for bad eating actually goes from like Halloween through to the Super Bowl or maybe even Valentine's Day. It can just be a really tough stretch. Which is why, when I have a chance to actually cook at home for myself and my family, I really want something healthy, seasonal, full of vegetables and great flavors. And HelloFresh does the trick. They are the #1 meal kit in America, making home cooking easier with chef-crafted recipes and fresh ingredients delivered straight to your door. And they've recently taken things to the next level, doubling their menu, packing it with healthy, high-protein recipes from all over the globe. If you cook at home with HelloFresh, you just might forget that you ate all that junk at those last 5 holiday parties. The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/thisday10FM now to get 10 free meals and a free item for life, 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. Once again, that's HelloFresh.com/thisday10FM to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. This day is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Listen, going online without ExpressVPN is like driving a car without a seatbelt. Even if you are the best driver in the world, do you really trust your life to all the other erratic, maniacal drivers on the road? Look, I'm pretty savvy. When I go online, I try and protect my information. I'm careful about what sites I visit, but I often have this lingering feeling in the back of my head that just one mistake will send my information down this whole rabbit hole where it'll get traded and exploited, and you never know where it will end up. ExpressVPN stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. When I turn on ExpressVPN, which, by the way, works on phones, laptops, tablets, and more, I know that I am staying secure. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/thisday. That's expressvpn.com/thisday to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months. expressvpn.com/thisday.
You know, there are many Wikipedia rabbit holes that people go down that are just like looking at the Wikipedia pages and reading about them and going off of all the hyperlinks. But I love going into the talk section of certain Wikipedia articles because, I mean, it's pedantry, right? Like, it's just like people are arguing about very small things, but they come armed with sources, right? They're making their argument, they're making their case. And it actually is a pretty great study in, well, what is the consensus on how we know what we know and who wins in these arguments? And it is fascinating, especially in these very contentious articles, to see how those things get resolved.
Yeah, that's the word I think I would put in front of all of this is consensus. That is what Wikipedia is. It is not, necessarily sort of like it's this or it's that, but it's a general consensus of how people have understood either a particular person or a particular moment or issue that I think is helpful when you're trying to do peripheral research on something.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let's broaden the scope here a little bit. I mean, I think we've hinted at some of the key tensions that, Garrett, you explore throughout your series and this idea that the internet feels very broken. But in 2003, were all those similar tensions that were playing out now sort of on the table? I mean, was it really about like, do people want to make money from this, or is there some higher calling?
Yeah. So this is the 4th season of our series Long Shadow. And every season we try to take a public policy issue and explain how America got to now. In our 2nd season, we actually interviewed a woman named Nicole Hemmer that I would encourage you to go back and listen to for our season on the rise
podcaster.
of the American. Yes. That's exactly how we introduced her, obviously. Noted podcast star on the rise of the American far right. And last year we did sort of gun violence and gun policy. And this year we decided to look at what we're calling sort of the rise and fall of the internet, and how this tool that started with such promise, and the goal was to, of these early years was this very explicit promise in a lot of the world of the internet and tech of a tool that was going to bring people together. It was going to democratize information like Wikipedia. It was going to sort of provide the average person more access to better information than the president of the United States could get in the presidential daily brief, 10 years earlier. And, to a certain extent that proved true. And yet at the same time, the internet today has devolved into something that, feels, I think, to most of us as this sort of cesspool of hate and racism and misogyny and conspiracy. And that sort of the internet, more than anything, this tool that, again, going back to the promise of Wikipedia, that was going to sort of deliver us the closest approximation of truth or consensus that we could have about knowledge, has instead created all of these filter bubbles and echo chambers that really have led us into sort of deeper debates about the very nature of our shared reality than I think any of us were prepared for, 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, up to and including, I wouldn't have really told you 10 or 15 years ago that we were going to be re-debating whether vaccines were a good thing for, human society. So what we try to do across the 7 episodes of the season this summer is trace the decisions that led to that. Mm-hmm. And I think what surprised me in the course of this, and this is where I sort of get around to answering your actual underlying question, is these were much more conscious choices, particularly by large businesses, particularly by tech companies like Facebook and Twitter and Google, that have sort of led us into this algorithm-driven web. The algorithms which were originally adopted at places like Facebook and Twitter for profit reasons, not because they were sort of they made the site better, but because they made people stay on the sites longer. And the way that in these algorithms sort of give you the thing that it thinks will keep you on the site longer. And one of the answers to that is that which enrages us engages us. Yeah. And so, as soon as the algorithms begin to take over the web and take over social media in the early 2010s, almost to the month and day, you can begin to see the internet fork into the cesspool that it has become since. And you begin to see the rise of the weaponization of information operations by Russia and other organizations. You begin to see, the rise and spread of conspiracies. This is something that Nicole and I have both done a bunch of work on, the way that we have sort of become a nation of conspiracists. And, a big part of that is once the algorithms discover you are conspiracy curious, they are designed to feed you a bunch of new conspiracies, things that you start out wondering about vaccines, and pretty soon you're being given white supremacist content and flat earth content.
But just to highlight kind of what you pointed out, because I think it's such a key change, it's because the incentive changed from offering you a good product to do whatever it takes to keep you on our platform, right?
Because one very specific thing happens. These tech companies make a choice different than Wikipedia, and they're for profit, and they go for IPOs. Right. And the moment they go for their IPOs, they start becoming focused on revenue and profit. And the way to do that, when you are giving away the website, and Facebook has always been free, and Mark Zuckerberg promises it's always going to be free, is that you charge for advertising. And the more people stay on your website, the more opportunities for advertising you get.
That's why I think Wikipedia is such a great window into this change that you're mapping, because it's the fork in the road, right? And when it comes out, It's hard for some of our younger listeners to probably imagine what it was like when you first had access to the internet and when it got more dynamic in the early 2000s. And the idea that at your fingertips, you could learn anything. And there's some gatekeeping around Wikipedia because it's like, oh, well, we don't want people to be misinformed. What if it's not good information? To now it being like one of the few authoritative sources of information on the internet, which is now a place where you go to be bewildered about the world and to be misinformed. And
it's
so
crazy that Wikipedia is like the gold standard now compared to like Googling something or asking AI like what day is it, which it usually gets wrong. I mean, it's just wild for anyone who kind of lived through those moments when people were really critical of Wikipedia. But Garrett, I'm so glad you're kind of highlighting this, and I know this is the thrust of your piece, but I find myself eternally frustrated when people kind of just talk about like the internet as if the dividing line is like 2001 and it's before and after, and not this understanding that we've been through like a bunch of different kinds of internet, and just in the last 10 years, like things radically shifted under people's feet without them really, or in people's palms without them really realizing. But part of that I wonder is, what is your language for that shift? Right? Because you talk about Internet 2.0 and a sort of social media that was actually social. What do you call this moment now? I feel like we didn't do a good job of saying, hey, it's different, and here's what we need to, here's the language around how to recognize that it's different.
Yeah, and I think you guys just touched on this a little bit, but what worries me is we're about to turbocharge all of this, that the rise and spread of AI I think is poisoning a lot of our information sources in ways that we don't even really recognize right now. I saw someone talking the other day about sort of the idea of, this is like the first era of the nuclear tests in the atmosphere, and that there's sort of like artifacts where, you want sort of metal and elements and from pre-nuclear days, because that background radiation that now exists in the whole world is not present. And I think I worry a lot that that's exactly what we're stumbling into in AI, which is sort of almost nothing after early 2020s is going to be fully trustable going forward for historians or academics or researchers or journalists, because we're sort of hooking up our society to this like probabilistic, copyright infringing, hallucinating machine. And it's going to be really, really hard going forward to untangle sort of what's real, what's something that approximated real, and what's an outright hallucination.
I love that. It's all like irradiated content now.
Yeah. So true. So, which is even more scary.
Except for the people, the difference is the people who were building the bombs were the ones sort of warning us about it, and the people building AI are the ones just rushing headlong.
Well, except they're the ones sounding the
alarm, but they're not hitting the brakes.
Right, which is the weirdest thing
That's
to me.
True,
which
too.
is like, man, this thing could just destroy humanity in the next 18 to 24 months.
Here's our next update.
Meanwhile.
We'll have our next update coming out in 3 months.
Click like and subscribe.
Okay, so any other moments as we start to wrap up? Because again, I just want to reiterate that I think it's so important to realize the so many different chapters in this story. It's not like there was no internet and then there is internet. And I just, again, get eternally frustrated that people don't realize all the little shifts that have happened to us, Any other kind of key moments that you didn't maybe know about or that jumped out at you?
So the algorithm is a big one. Yeah. And then our final episode, our 7th episode, we call the red pill. And that's a reference. Nicole just made the face that she knows exactly what we're talking about, which is sort of this idea of the way that sort of far-right extremists have, captured, I think is the right word, a large portion of the social web now. and sort of no one brain melted more than Elon Musk, and that we sort of trace in this 7th episode this pretty weird and obscure scandal from the mid 2010s called Gamergate, and how that becomes really the model for all the web grows into, all the social media world grows into in the early 2020s in terms of hate and misogyny and racism and doxing, conspiracies, and up to and including the guy who ends up buying Twitter and stepping into wreck our U.S. government in the spring of 2025. And I think that sort of path to the radicalization of the web and social media grows directly out of the earlier algorithm moment, but is one that is far more damaging to our offline world.
Yeah.
In the moment that we're living in right now, and one that we're very much still living with the reverberations of right now.
All right. Well, we are going to leave it there, but Garrett Graff's series is called Long Shadow, Breaking the Internet, 7 parts. Now, before we go, though, a pop quiz for all of you.
Ooh.
I am looking at a page of the 10 most controversial Wikipedia pages. And this is defined by, I gather, the pages with the most kind of corrections that have then gotten reversed, right? So like you make an edit and then someone reverses the edit, which is an indicator of so Kellie, you get to guess first. Who has the most controversial, frequently edited Wikipedia page?
Is it a person?
I'll give you a hint. It's a person.
Okay, then Donald Trump.
No. Close, though.
No!
Same category of person, though. Garrett, you get to go next.
I'm going to guess Jesus Christ.
That's a good guess. And I'm curious
I like
what
you
category,
see that as the equivalent of Donald
what category are you
Trump.
thinking of here?
Yeah.
But that's like, I think, number 4 is Jesus Christ. It's a very 2000, and so we're pinning this to 2003, right? Mm-hmm. When Wikimedia sort of makes this change, Wikipedia takes off. So it's a very 2003 answer.
George W. Bush.
There it is. George W. Bush has
Really?
the most edited, which,
I combine Jesus Christ and Donald Trump.
Yes,
God.
but yeah.
Exactly in between the two.
But no, I mean, like when you went on the internet in 2003 and 4, what did you fight about? It was George W. Bush. So I guess I'm not
Invasion of
surprised.
Iraq,
Yeah, makes
but
sense.
then anarchism is number 2. Muhammad is up there. Global warming, Jesus, Christianity, atheism. Those are all on the top there. But yes.
Wow.
I would have also guessed that there's some obscure sci-fi
Yes.
or Star Trek-y like thing.
Lord of the
Is that-
Rings trilogy.
Yes,
I was trying to find it actually, and I couldn't. But there's a website called Depths of Wikipedia, which is one of my favorite social website, and they have a newsletter and a social media accounts. And the woman who runs it just finds very obscure and fascinating Wikipedia pages. But I think she has posted about the kind of like most esoteric, longest running fights, and it is something like that, Garrett. It's like some sci-fi thing that like 2 people have been fighting for like 17 years nonstop.
Oh my
about it in the talk
gosh.
section. But hey, I'd rather that than some algorithm feeding us slop.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
All right, Garrett, congratulations on the series. Thank you for all the work you do. Anytime you have a new project, you are always welcome to come back and chat about it. But thank you,
Great.
Garrett Graff.
Thanks so much for having me.
Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kellie Carter-Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
This Day is a proud member of Radiotopia, a network of independent, artist-produced podcasts. Don't forget to sign up for our America 250 Watch newsletter. Every Thursday, members get exclusive access to analysis and information about the upcoming semi-quincentennial, commentary from our team, and a list of fascinating things that happened that week throughout history. Join in, find out lots more at thisdaypod.com. You can also follow This Day Pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Jacob Feldman is our researcher. Brittany Brown is our editor. My name is Jody Avirgan. See you soon.
Radiotopia. From P.